So last time we talked about marriage and money, and today we're going to dig deeper into the issue of finances in a family setting, mainly how to deal with finances with your kids. So, what are some of your experiences? What are some of the things that you remember from when you're a child that you about how to deal with finances that your parents taught you, on how to handle finances?
Yeah, sure. So I think, looking back as a kid, one of the key things that my parents were really very intentional to teach us kids about is that money comes from work. And so as a little kid, if you wanted something, then my parents would say, okay, this is what you want, but I'll give you, if you wanted something which was going for, say, $20, they'd say, okay, well, I'll give you, say, $5, and then you have to go and multiply it. And some of the business ventures that they introduced us to was, well, you get that $5, you go and buy a box of Frizz-Its. What are they called? Uh, uh, um, the like Kool-Aid pops. Maybe that's the best thing. But Frizz-Its, that's what they're called in Zimbabwe. And so you buy a box, and then you'd actually sell it. And so as a kid, I'd buy a box, go and stand at a street corner and sell my box of Frizz-Its, double my money. And then my parents would step in and match that. So those are some really, really good lessons from childhood. Sometimes it was Frizz-Its, but at other times it was sugar cane, whatever was selling at that point, at that time. And so I think that was a really good lesson from my parents, that hey, money comes from work. And then I think, uh, obviously, when I wanted that money, that was with a consumer mentality. Say, hey, I want this money so that I can go and buy something as a consumer, rather than from an investor mindset. And so, looking back, I can see that my parents were trying to teach us, the kids, about these concepts. One of the key things which comes to mind is you know, they had us open. At that time, it was Zim Bank. They had these Teen
Kiddie
Bank,
bags.
Kiddie Bank, and Teen Bank accounts. They had us open those, and so we actually opened bank accounts and started learning about bank accounts that way. And then I think, as far as investing, uh, so I'd see these sort of share certificates and certificates of deposit that my dad had. And I do remember the one time, when he was going to make one of those, and we went together. And so it was, I can see that they were making an effort to try to get us to learn more about money. But obviously, some of those lessons, they did not sink in. It took a really long time to
Right.
start to get appreciation. Yeah, I don't know about you.
Well, I think I kind of have similar but very different, um, I guess, upbringing, in the sense that yes, I do remember my mom taking us to open like a kiddie bank, and I could see what her intentions were. But I think after the first kind of deposit, we never really went back. Like I don't even remember what happened to that account. And I remember she used to try to help us to budget. So every week, at the beginning of the week, she would give me money that was supposed to last the whole week, right? But being me, by Tuesday, that money would be gone. By Wednesday, I'm like scrambling, right? Thank goodness for siblings. Because I couldn't really go back to my mom and say, it's Wednesday, I don't have, bus fare anymore. She would always ask, like, what happened to your money? It was supposed to be for the week, So I would always go to my siblings and they would always, like, help me out. And the one thing I really, truly remember was my mom had a file, like a box, where she kept all her important papers. So occasionally she would sit me down and go through all her things. She'd say, okay, these are my bank accounts, these are my insurance policies, the black book, who owes me what, you know, like everything, right? And she'd say, if I wake up one day and I'm not there, I don't want you to struggle. I want you to know where everything is. So I think up to now, that's why I'm a bit of a stickler when it comes to being prepared, right? Because I saw that being modeled to me. Now about saving, yeah, she did have a culture of saving, but it wasn't necessarily transferred to us as kids, right? It was more, we were more consumers than saving for the future, right? So I can't really speak on that. The intention was to help us, but because that lesson wasn't necessarily repeated, it kind of like flew over my head.
Yeah, and so I think just looking back in time, I do remember actually being really engaged about the that teen bank account. The one thing which, for me, because I can see my parents, they were trying to get me into this culture. Even my mom had a POSB,
Yep.
and she'd send me to make all these deposits. My mom has always been enterprising, so she'd make clothes, sell them, make sweaters, sell them, get the profits and deposit them. And so I think the one thing which really sort of killed that for me, and I'd like to believe for many people in my generation, is hyperinflation, because that account, it quickly became nothing. And then we went through this phase where if you had money, to get any value out of it, you had to convert it into dollars or spend it right away. And so I think,
I guess this is my question. Before that, were you consistently, as an individual outside of your parents, were you saving in your own accord?
so I would say, I think no is a safe answer.
Yes.
And yeah, and so I'll be honest. So during that time, sort of that hyperinflation time, you know, so there was, call it, a certain lifestyle that I was used to, and that I would finance using my salary. But then there came a point where even that salary would last 2 weeks, and it's gone. And I was really fortunate that my parents would finance the other 2 weeks of it. and so
But what I was trying to get is, you didn't already have the culture of saving.
that is true. I did not have that culture of saving. I had a consumer mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was a consumer, not an investor.
Which is something I feel like, as the next generation, as we raise our own kids, we want to change that mentality.
Yes.
Of not just being a consumer, but also investing for the future. Right now, what that looks like will be different for many people.
Yes.
right? Depending on where you are, but that mentality is actually nurtured. You just don't wake up and all of a sudden you are an investor.
I think that is true. And so there's two aspects. There's first of all, for kids to really know where money comes from. That money doesn't come from their parents. Money comes from work. And then that after they have the money, they have a choice to make between being a consumer or an investor. And and so I think, you know, it obviously took me a long time to get to that point. But I think the key thing is that now that we are here, we can sort of pick it up from where our parents left off. Because our parents, they were they were really trying to teach us all these lessons the best they could, and within the tools that were available to them. And obviously, we're all at different, in different places, in different walks of life. But whatever tools are available to you, there is a tool that you can use to teach your kids. You know, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that the most valuable thing for me is actually the knowledge, right? Because it's something that your kids carry with you, right? Whether you have money right now to invest or not, but if they have that knowledge, if they do come into money, they know what to do.
That is true. Yep. And so you'd end up avoiding that issue where, you know, God forbid you pass on, then you leave all your assets to your children, and the only thing that your children know to do is to consume, because they are consumers. That's all they did under your care. And they, guess what? They would not all of a sudden wake up as investors. They would continue to be consumers. And before you know it, everything that you left them would be gone. So maybe I think one area we can go into is maybe just sharing what we are trying to do to teach our own kids. Just to give as an example, obviously it differs with where everyone is. We're all in different walks of life, different places. Uh-huh.
Well, we've got two biological kids, um, five, almost five, and almost 11. Right? The thing that was important to us is, first of all, for them to learn where money comes from. So with us, we don't do allowances, right? We tried that with our older, like, son, like, years ago, and he was just a consumer,
Yeah.
right? Before we knew it, we had all these toys, right? Every time he had any money, he would spend it on toys, right? So we realized, okay, that's not going to work. So now what we have is we work on a commission-based system where for them to get money, they have to work for it. We just don't give away free money. Now, they both know it. My daughter and my son, they know it. If they want money, they work, they have jobs. Now, obviously, these are age dependent, right? For my younger daughter, she can do things like do the dishes, for example, right? She's not going to do them perfectly because, she's 5, but she knows that if she wants to get money to buy like an extra toy, then she goes to work. My son, the same thing. He's got certain chores that he has to do weekly, and from that he gets money. And the money he gets, he knows it's not just money to consume. He has to put away money into his savings, and then he has to put money to his giving, and then he has to put money to his spending. So we've given him, since he's older, we've given him a yearly goal, right, where the money that he puts in for the year is set at a specific amount, minimum, and then he's decided that that money he wants to buy a car eventually, right? So that money is invested, and then we said, okay, we will double up whatever you save every year, right? So whatever he saves, we double it, and then we invest it for him. Now, he knows what the money is invested in.
I think that's another critical point between us investing for him
Yes.
versus him making the investment decisions. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, what he's going to learn from making the investment decisions himself, rather than us making them for him. Obviously, as parents, we came alongside and said, okay, well, let's invest. Now that you have this money, what do you want to invest in? Well, we said, okay, invest in stocks, in shares. And then we just went through, hey, let's look around the house. Well, we have iPhones and iPads. Who makes those? Apple. Well, buy, you know, an Apple fractional share. Well, where do we like to shop? Well, you buy things on Amazon. Well, go and buy an Amazon fractional share. Well, what else? What do you like to eat? And so, just looking at things around him. His games. I think that was another good one.
Oh, yeah.
He likes to play, Nintendo Switch, Nintendo games. Well, who makes them? Buy.
Yes.
And I think one of the critical connections, I think, which sort of switched on the light bulb for him about the difference between being a consumer and an investor, is that when when he looks at the things that he uses, and he goes and buys those shares in those companies as investments. Well, each time other people buy Nintendo games, he is making money. Each time people shop on Amazon, he is making money. Each time people buy iPhones, he is making money. And obviously, the one that excites him the most is Nintendo. And you know, I think the dots have connected for him over multiple conversations. Obviously, with kids, you have to repeat everything many, many times before it even starts to sink. So the other day, I think we were saying, hey, Nintendo, they are going to release a new console. And by the way, that console, it's not that different from the one which they released last year. And then we just said, hey, let's talk about that. Well, so he could clearly see that for him, it wasn't going to be really of any value for him to even want that console because it's not that different. But he could see how it's a good thing that, hey, if Nintendo goes and sells these and people buy them, he's the one making money. And so that's one thing which was really helpful in moving him from just a pure consumer to having that investor mindset.
And also just seeing the money grow in his account, right?
Yes.
That's a good incentive for him, because he's always like, okay, I'm actually not doing anything, and my money is working for me.
Yep.
So that gets him really excited. And then obviously, as he's growing older, we get more in depth with explaining how investments work, right? We basically talk about why you invest in particular companies. What are some of the things that, you know, what are you looking at, right? There are obviously some companies that pay dividends. What's that all about, right? So obviously it's age based, right? As your child grows older, you can add more stuff. But then the thing is, if you are not aware, or if you are not an investor, right? If you do not have your finances in check, if you and your spouse are not on the same page financially, then it's going to be very difficult to have those conversations with your kids,
Yep.
right? Because how do you explain to your child when you actually don't know what your spouse is up to,
That is true.
right? When you are in the dark about your own finances, right? So it's kind of all tied into financial transparency with your spouse.
I think that's a key point. That I mean, it's everything in a family starts between the two of you, and so any dysfunction that exists between the two of us, it cascades down. And by the way, we're not trying to give the impression that we're perfect.
Far from it.
We are far from it. So
But we're learning as we go.
we are learning as we go, and the reason that we're doing these videos is not because we are perfect. It's just we realize that, hey, there's so many things that we've learned, and we've just realized that growing up there used to be those circles where the younger people got counseling from older people. But those circles, they don't seem to be as intact as they used to be. So the reason we're doing these videos is to share what we've learned. Not that we are perfect, we're not. We are still learning too. A lot more things we're learning, but just sharing.